Hey everybody, what I'm going to cover in this video I think is quite unique, and I think it hasn't been touched upon in any other investment channel and not in any Tesla or NIO YouTube channel so far. So I'm pretty excited to show you my research that I've been doing on Tesla autonomy, on NIO full self-driving and their approach to autonomy in partnership with Mobileye. So if you enjoy that, please give this video some love and hit the like button, subscribe to our channel for follow-ups on this video and this topic, but also on more topics around investing in NIO and Tesla, and also about some other companies that have a large exposure to the Chinese market or are IPOs from China. And I think this video could be crucial for investors to understand where NIO and Tesla's valuation will be going, because in this video I'm going to show you that I'm actually thinking that Mobileye has a good chance of catching up with what Tesla is doing when it comes to autonomy. However, I also share my views that I think Tesla will still be having the lead here, and I will also be telling you about how NIO fits in this and what is their unique approach to autonomy, and I will also be comparing it to Tesla. So let's just dive into it. First of all, to my new viewers, I am both invested in NIO as well as in Tesla, so I am a little bit biased. If you are skeptical of these companies, take my videos with a grain of salt, because I obviously want those companies to succeed. However, if you see the history of this channel, I'm always trying to stay objective, and also I will be changing my views whenever I do some research that is kind of changing my opinion and my thesis why I've invested in those companies. So I will always stay transparent about it. However, none of what I'm saying here is investment advice. You need to come up with your own ideas of how to invest in those companies. So when it comes to autonomous vehicles, I am a big fan of Tesla's approach to full self-driving, and I like their approach of getting rid of the LiDAR, which is costly, and enabling autonomous cars simply on a vision-based approach, and leveraging their fleet actually to collect data in order to improve the autopilot. So I think the strategy outlined by Elon Musk and executed by Andrej Karpathy will be successful, and I have tested Tesla Autopilot, for instance, in China, and I was impressed on how well it's working already. At the same time, I've also tested early versions of NIO Pilot in Shanghai, so go back to my videos and watch it again. They're still valid, and whereas I was impressed by the early features and the functionality of the NIO Pilot, I think it's still obvious that the capabilities of NIO Pilot are not as good as Tesla's Autopilot today. However, also still one of the most advanced in the industry, as I'm showing here in this chart. So now in my mind, for most of the time, I had Tesla as the clear winner on the race to autonomy in mind, and Robotaxis are still part of my investment thesis in Tesla. And I like the fact that Elon Musk is actually pushing it really hard, communicating it aggressively. So well, I know there's lots of people always talking about like how Elon Musk is just talking and bragging, but in the end, yeah, sometimes he's wrong on the timeline, but in the end, he always delivers on what he is saying that he's going to do. However, when I started investing in NIO, I also started digging into deeper what Intel and Mobileye is actually doing in their approach with autonomous vehicles, and I think it is always good to stay open to whatever happens in the industry. So here is some interesting stuff that I've found. Look at this test that Mobileye is running in Israel right now. The car is handling a 40 minutes ride in the inner city of Tel Aviv without any major issues. The driving is pretty smooth, unexpected situations are handled quite well, the car is going through roundabouts, it is stopping for red lights, and it is even overtaking obstacles. So my views, Mobileye's demonstration here is actually looking pretty good, and they're showing that with their tech that they're having, also similar to Tesla without any LiDAR, so a low-cost setup. On the hardware side, they have their own chipset, they have less TOPS, so peak performance than Tesla, but also a lower energy consumption with their own chip, and also they have their own cameras and sensor systems. So it looks all pretty legit to me actually, and I'm quite impressed by what I can see here in this video. So there are a couple of things we need to consider here and actually ask critically. So we don't know how Mobileye's system would behave in an unknown territory. Maybe the path shown in this video has been hard-coded, and maybe it's been extensively prepared before the test and it might be geofenced. So whereas Tesla's Autopilot really is being used everywhere where Teslas are being driven today. So it seems that Mobileye's testing here is still much more bound to these test regions. Recently, they've been adding Germany now, where they're now allowed to do testing. But of course, this is entirely different to the extent of what Tesla is providing in the real world. But now what really struck me here with Mobileye is that they are starting to copy Tesla's approach of collecting data. So I watched this talk by Mobileye's CEO at the CES, and he said they already in 2008 started to collect data from vehicles of a couple of different OEMs that are using Mobileye's chipsets, as well as a so-called REM kit that he mentions in the presentation. So I found it interesting to hear that the CEO states that in this year they will be receiving 6 million kilometers of data every day from about 1 million vehicles, and that the fleet vehicle is about to grow to 14 million till 2022. So when I saw this, I started to dig deeper into the data advantage of Tesla and wanted to see how it really compares to what Mobileye is doing here. So of course, it's a huge competitive advantage that Tesla is doing in comparison to Waymo, for instance, that they're collecting real-world data from their fleet, paid by customers, so that's also cool, and not by hiring expensive engineers. And frankly, it was really news to me that Mobileye is doing a similar approach to Tesla at this extent that I just mentioned here. So I started calculating Tesla's run rate as well as Mobileye's based on the data points that I know. So for Tesla, I used the numbers published by Lex Friedman from MIT, as well as their publicly announced data points about how many miles they had collected so far, as well as projections about the fleet growth based on ARK Invest's bull and bear case for Tesla and the growth in sales numbers, as well as my own projections of what I think is realistic in the future. And for Mobileye, I used those public numbers announced in this presentation, and I also made my own projections about how big their fleet will grow based on the fact that 6 OEMs will fit their fleet with Mobileye sensors, all sending data back, and that could be used for Robotaxis in the end. So in the end, I calculated 6 different scenarios, 3 cases for Tesla, a minimum, a likely, and a maximum case, as well as for Mobileye, the same thing, a minimum case, a likely case, and a maximum case. And my overall finding is that because of the fleet size, the sheer fleet size of Mobileye, I think they will be able to catch up with Tesla, and in some cases, comparing different scenarios, even overtaking Tesla by 2024 or 2025. So even though Tesla really had an upstart and starting 3 years earlier to collect data than Mobileye, I think it's likely that we see a close race. And even if Tesla sales are executing on a bull case scenario, it may get even a really tight race here to the race to autonomy on if we just look at the data collection. Now, some points I need to note here. First off, my scenarios depend on a couple of different variables, such as the fleet sales, the percentage of Autopilot activated, kilometers collected per car per day, and so on. And also, we are just comparing Autopilot miles versus Mobileye miles and not Tesla miles driven in general. So if we compare it, just all driven miles, Tesla actually would still have a large advantage. So I think the question we need to ask here is, what kind of data is Mobileye collecting and how does it compare to the data collected by Tesla? Can Tesla only work with the data collected with Autopilot activated, or is there also non-activated data that is relevant in this case? How good is the quality of the data of Mobileye in comparison to Tesla miles and Tesla Autopilot miles? And how much data is actually necessary in total? And what will happen with the data exactly? Well, I don't think my scenarios can really answer these questions, and I can only make the following assumptions. I do think that Tesla's data quality will be much higher due to their vertical integration because they have a standardization of their fleet and also feeding the neural network to make it learn from which decisions to take with the goal of enabling Tesla cars to even handle unfamiliar paths and situations. On the other hand, I think Mobileye's data collection is largely focused on building those 3D street maps, which is just one layer of the autonomy tech stack, although it's an important one. So yeah, these 3D maps are super important in order to make autonomous vehicles possible. However, in contrast to what Tesla is doing, I think Tesla is building the car to be, fully autonomous in a way that it seems to me that Tesla cars would not even depend so much on external data or those kind of 3D maps. So in general, I would say even though Mobileye seems to be catching up here or even overtaking on the numbers of data, the miles collected here, I would still see Tesla in the lead, and the quality of data should be much superior, as well as the general approach seems to be, to me, much more sophisticated than what Mobileye is doing. So thereby, I'm still confident that Tesla's approach to autonomy is actually the most bullish case and it will prevail. For instance, when it comes to the quality of the data collected, it seems like Tesla, what they are collecting is much more advanced with all of those different cameras around the car and also with Autopilot enabled, and the data that is being sent back in the cases that are being sent back. I cannot imagine how this Mobileye kit that is used with those larger fleet cars now on the roads can actually collect a similar amount of the quality of data and sending it back to the engineers that are working, receiving those data and using the machine algorithms and so on. However, my research also gave me some important insights into how NIO could actually become a player in the field of autonomy, given their partnership with Intel Mobileye. Obviously, the advancement in data collection with a similar approach to Tesla will help NIO to take the next steps in autonomy with the help of Mobileye. And it's clear that NIO isn't doing it on their own, so here are some things to consider. First, for the data collection part, the CEO mentions that they have 2 OEMs in China that they are working with, which they cannot disclose. I think it is likely that one of them is actually NIO and the other one may be even Audi, considering that they have been using Mobileye IQ4 hardware as well. But don't nail me on that, I don't know it for sure, I'm just guessing here. Second, the CEO goes on and talks about the issues in China regarding mapping.
So in terms of REM in China, right, again, we need to comply with the regulations in China, which are very complex.
So yeah, it is complicated, and I have actually been part of other projects of launching car-sharing services in China with a couple of German companies, and it's always been a difficult topic of whether or not the company can actually get the proper licenses in operating in China. I have also building an e-commerce company myself, launching an app into the Chinese market, selling to Chinese consumer, and also for us it's always been a real pain to obtain the proper licenses or move the servers to China and stuff like that in order to be able to sell to Chinese consumer or offer our services to Chinese consumers. So these internet regulations of the internet are really big barriers to overcome, particularly when it comes to mapping, to data collection, and to offering services to Chinese consumers. And oftentimes, to be quite honest about it, it's only Chinese companies that can really get the licenses that you need in order to map the streets, to get proper GPS, to have the licenses to offer certain services. And frankly speaking, this is just a way of China protecting its economy. That's why the big players in China are all Chinese companies, are Chinese tech companies, and it's unfair in some regards, and even it's affecting Tesla here. If we look at Tesla news about relocating their services in China and speaking about that the Autopilot will be totally different with the China team, well, it's just basically another way of saying we also are desperate to finding ways of launching our services in China. And yeah, to be frank about it, it's protectionism by China. And that's why for international companies, it's extremely hard to be successful in China. So this is also for me why NIO is actually also an interesting hedge in terms of investing in autonomy and on autonomy specifically for China. And I think it's also the reason why Mobileye has partnered with NIO in China. And now that NIO has government funding in addition to being a Chinese company and with a big backing of Tencent, well, NIO really has a unique advantage in China here when it comes to local regulations regarding those data collection points and mappings, etc. So I've mentioned before, I've tested NIO Pilot, and with the over-the-air software updates, I am expecting that NIO Pilot will actually be improving its functionality in the next months, as well as update its capacities from time to time, similar to what Tesla is doing. However, I do think that we're looking at a big potential leapfrogging here of NIO in the area of autonomy. I think NIO might be actually one of the first players to bring a fully for autonomy optimized vehicle to the market, because frankly, if we look at Model 3, it's it might be capable of doing full self-driving in the future, but it's nowhere optimized for full autonomy. So I think NIO will be one of the first to develop a special autonomous vehicle that is designed for it from scratch, and they will actually be selling it to Mobileye. Yes, you heard me right. I think they will be selling it to Mobileye, who will be operating the Robotaxi fleet. If you watch what the CEO of Mobileye is saying here.
We mentioned a month ago the deal with the NIO. Their ES8 vehicle will be used as our Robotaxi. NIO will be taking our self-driving system, and in 2022 timeframe, they will launch in China vehicles of consumer AV, and those vehicles, we can purchase them and use them for our Robotaxi fleet as well. So it's a double advantage. One, it's our first experiment with consumer AV in China, and also we have a platform for our Robotaxi.
And remember, when I interviewed the co-founder of NIO last year, Chuck Chung, he mentioned how NIO will be looking to introduce level 4 autonomy in 2 years' time. And I think this is what they will be starting to sell, the NIO Eve as a vehicle entirely optimized for autonomy, leveraging Mobileye's tech stack. So this is a totally different approach to Tesla if we look at it at the details. So NIO will be the one collecting the China data for Mobileye, starting with the ES8 of today. And besides that, SAIC, which is also the joint venture of Volkswagen, will also be doing that in China. And then NIO will be working on a new tech stack exclusive to NIO, as mentioned by the CEO here, in a partnership with Mobileye. And I think what they are referring to is what they will be implementing with the NIO Eve concept. And usually I'm really skeptical about those concept cars because, well, usually it's just about bragging, and in the end the car doesn't look like that in reality. But when I was doing my research about the approach that Mobileye is doing and the way NIO is tackling autonomy, more and more things are coming together, and I think this will be really their approach. So now NIO's angle here, it will be totally different from Tesla, and as I was always preaching, NIO is not a manufacturer, they are a lifestyle brand, and they are not an OEM, they are certainly not vertically integrated as Tesla is. Instead, think of NIO as a platform business, as I'm going to show here. So in this partnership, NIO will be working with Mobileye closely. They will be sending the data to Mobileye, and they will be receiving the hardware and software, for instance the cloud stack, from Mobileye. NIO's key activities will be to having the direct-to-consumer access and at the same time designing and branding the new autonomous car, which will be produced by JAC Motors and another joint venture of NIO, maybe JIC in the future, and it will be sold to Mobileye, and they are going to be the fleet operator. So if we are looking at the value network here, NIO will be purchasing the AV hardware from Mobileye, but they will be taking a commission or a cut from Mobileye ride-hailing fleets. So for each of the transactions that they are making, I do think NIO will be getting a cut, because NIO is going to open actually the access to their consumer base on the NIO app, and they will be offering services to the Robotaxi fleet, for instance, the battery swapping, entertainment, for instance, the Autonomy digital assistant inside of the car, which is actually based on artificial intelligence, which will be getting more and more importance because entertainment is getting more and more important in such autonomous fleets. And also they can leverage Tencent as an investor with their streaming services for consuming videos or music. And don't forget, in advantage of Tesla here, this Robotaxi will be fully optimized for a journey in which the passenger doesn't have to drive at all. Instead, they can work and entertain themselves. So this is where NIO Life and NIO Houses and the digital assistant Autonomy and entertainment aspects of NIO brand come into play. So on top of those service businesses that NIO will earn probably a high margin fee, NIO will still earn a share of the money of Robotaxis sold to Mobileye and share the income together with JAC Motors or whoever who's producing the car for NIO. So you see, in contrast to Tesla, NIO is not owning the autonomy stack here. They're also not owning the vehicle data, but they will be the owner of the autonomy platform with direct access to the ride-hailing consumer, and they will be the one offering the high-margin services on this platform. So I think this model is a smart way because it doesn't require NIO to develop their own tech stack. And NIO can focus on building their brand, their NIO lifestyle services offerings, as well as the user base with a unique advantage in mainland China, because I know no player which will be able to match them in approaching this so far. Even Tesla's digital ecosystem is less advanced than NIO's when it comes to digital assistant and the app ecosystem. This is why Li Bin always speaks of NIO as the user enterprise and a lifestyle mobility brand. So to sum things up, I'm pretty happy to actually see those different approaches and that they are quite different from each other. I think Tesla and NIO both have a unique way of tackling autonomy. I do think Tesla is the leading player and they will be getting the larger share of autonomous vehicles in the market, also a larger chunk of the revenues actually, because they own it fully. They have the tech stack, they have the data, and they have the cars. NIO doesn't have that. And investing in both, in my views, is quite good because, well, I'm hedging both positions. If one of those approaches is maybe failing, then there is still the other one which is differentiating from that. And in that way, in an autonomous future, I still could win either with both cases, because I do think that actually both can coexist and actually both of them can make money on that. But at the same time, if one of them fails, I still have the other approach. So please let me know in the comments what you are thinking about those two approaches and how you view it. What do you think will be more successful? Which cases are you willing to invest in? Or maybe you just go with one of them or with none of them. Maybe you think it's all bullshit. For me, this is pretty much still work in progress, and I just wanted to share it with you today. I will be building on that, and actually, if you want to have my calculations, I will be offering them to actually the highest tier in our Patreon supporters, because I think most of this information will actually be relevant just to larger institutions, maybe some funds that are looking to invest, or some of the companies that we're usually working with. So it's not so much for the consumers. However, for my private investors supporting us on Patreon, I will be updating my Excel sheet on the NIO business case and the NIO valuation, and I will be making assumptions on how I think the NIO autonomy case that I just showed today will be actually materializing as income streams, as revenues, and also what this means for the valuation of NIO then. And as always, this will be available to all of my Patreons, no matter which tier you're supporting us. So I hope this will be insightful and of value to you. So once again, I'm pretty excited about it. Please give this video a like if you found it insightful. Please also subscribe to our channel to stay informed about it. Let me know once again in the comments about your opinion, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the weekend or the new week. Have a great new week, and yeah, stay tuned for more insights, and thanks for watching. See you.